Thank you, Your Excellencies, for being with us today. You are currently the IGAD Special Envoy for the Red Sea, and you have a 30 years career, distinguished career, as a Kenyan official, involved in several, almost all, mediation and negotiations process that the Horn of Africa region has witnessed in the last decades. You are currently directly involved in the Tumaini initiatives in South Sudan, led by Kenya. You have been directly involved in the comprehensive peace agreement in Sudan, between the government in Khartoum and the SPLM. And more recently, in 2022, you have been also directly involved in the Pretoria Agreement that ended the hostility between Addis Ababa and the Tigray region in Ethiopia. What have been your main lesson learned from these processes? And specifically, what are the biggest failure that you have witnessed, and what is the biggest success, and what are the ingredients that make failure and success possible in mediation in the Horn of Africa?
Yeah, thank you once again for this important discussion. The mediation in the Horn of Africa region has not been easy, but at the same time, it has also been possible because within a protracted negotiation and mediation process, critical results have been delivered. For example, the Somalia peace process, which at some point during the initial phase I was also involved in, produced the government in Somalia today. The comprehensive peace agreement, championed by IGAD, produced independence for South Sudan. And of course, other numerous mediation, including the one for Ethiopia peace process, the Pretoria, the one for Tigray, also has produced its own results. Now, in all these processes, one thing is clear. The success and failure of any of these processes hinges on one factor, and that is leadership. The process can fail because of inability by the leaders to make the decision to make a critical contribution for peace. The process can also succeed when the leaders are able to provide guidance, provide decision. For example, during the Pretoria process, the dynamism and pragmatism of the leaders and their ability to compromise, both of them, that is the one in Tigray and the one in Addis, their ability to compromise provided a clear direction on ending the Pretoria process, and we started the implementation phase.
What was the main compromise that the leaders have to do, if you can recall, and the most important moments in that mediation?
There were several agenda items. So, of course, it's about cessation of hostilities. That was the most important one, which both sides agreed to the key elements of cessation to permanent hostility. That was very important item during the Pretoria negotiation. And both sides were able to, come around. Remember that Pretoria, I think, took 9 days to negotiate. But before that, also there were other processes, especially back channel engagement and several other parameters of mediation that kicked in a proper way to make Pretoria a success, including, of course, the implementation framework which was negotiated during Nairobi 1 and Nairobi 2 process for Tigray. So that pragmatism and dynamism and ability to make compromise is also the same which we witnessed previously in other negotiation and mediation process. During the comprehensive peace agreement, the late Dr. John Garang and President Bashir, who was represented by the first Vice President Ali Osman Mohamed Aha, they were able to overcome their differences through compromise, through ability to be pragmatic, dynamic, ability to show collegiality, ability to show face of friendship, including to their parties, to their constituency. So they were able to come around and made a very important decision on self-determination, which led to the independence of South Sudan. It's not easy, but the leaders were able to do it. I wish they were able to do it in 1994 when the process started. It took 10 years for them to arrive at that important decision, which they would have done much earlier, even much earlier during when the war broke out in 1982-83. So those are very important lessons and ingredients that we have learned. And of course, also, there are a lot of other factors, including internal factors to the parties, their own constituencies, the spoilers within their constituencies, and ability by the leaders to rein in on all these spoilers. And then also ability to ensure that the external actors are also managed by the leaders in order to make decisions. Remember that all conflicts have its own external dimension. And therefore, a leadership that can be able to provide leadership for even the external actors to ensure that they are tagged along together with their own internal constituency and bring peace, that is what is required for mediation to be successful. And also mediation, those who mediate also.
Yes, what are the key ingredients to make a mediator successful?
The mediators also have to show, dynamism and pragmatism, and the leadership and guidance for the mediation process. It's not easy to deal with the parties with a divergent opinion, but it is possible for mediators to provide knowledge, to provide leadership, to provide solutions, to also, where possible, use back channel to communicate to the parties. And of course, leaders should also, the mediator should also have some kind of leverage. If leverage, the mediator doesn't have leverage of his own, then does he or she have ability to borrow the leverage so that the parties can be headed towards resolution of this conflict.
So the issue is not just to deal with the parties, but with the external players who have leverage on the party and convince them to be behind them in the mediation.
Exactly. First of all, the mediator must be in a position to understand the nature of the conflict, the actors in the conflict, the issues in the conflict, and how the conflict dimension look like, both in its internal sense and also in its external dimension. With that, therefore, the mediator is fully equipped to understand which pressure point to touch, which button to touch, what kind of leverage to apply internally to the parties, even for the external actors, and what kind of leverage and back channel is available out there. These are all critical resources That is important for the mediator. The mediator should be a diplomat par excellence, should be also political in a sense, because the issues one is dealing with is a political issue, and therefore should have a master of political skills. Of course, the other important aspect is how to engage the leaders themselves, ability to engage the leaders. Leaders, of course, will provide their own guidance at the end of the day. Mediation is at the mercy of the parties. It's not an arbitration, you know it. So the power relation, of course, is the parties have a say in the mediation process. But how can the leaders provide leadership and knowledge to have some kind of a parity in terms of power relation with the leaders and with the parties to the conflict? That is a key ingredient.
So I remember that 20 years ago, most of the mediation in these regions, as well in the Middle East, were often done by United Nations Special Envoy. Then in these regions, we had a trend to delegate solutions to the African Union, and we have seen African Union and IGAD taking more of a central role in brokering mediations. Today, with the crisis of multilateralism, with much more unilateralism, the end of the international order as we know, and the emergence of an international order that we still can't define. What is your advice for mediation processes? What should we go back to multilateralism, or should instead be open to new solutions?
Yeah. The nature of conflict in our region has really changed. Actually, not in our region alone, but globally. The nature of conflict is changing. The trajectory of conflict is changing. The actors and issues in the conflicts are changing. For example, in the Horn of Africa region, in the past, the Horn was to some extent insulated from many places. The geopolitics of the Horn was more or less, we knew that we knew where we were operating, our theater of operation. But now, the Horn is having influence from the Sahel. The Horn is having influence from the Middle East, from Great Lakes. So the Horn of Africa, the IGAD region, is sandwiched between many geopolitical areas. And therefore, this has changed the nature of conflicts. With the changing nature of conflicts, then there should be a change of strategies of peaceful settlement of these conflicts. We need to go back and have a lesson from the past. What has changed and what is continuing. We need to get the best of the past, integrate it with the current reality, and bring on board a value addition to the mediation process so that we are able to deal with the changing dynamics of what is happening in our region today. In the past, as you know, our region was able to deal with its own problems. African solution to African problem. Mm-hmm. Conflict in Somalia was resolved. In Sudan was resolved. South Sudan the same, and others, and so on and so forth. But today, with the raging conflict in the Horn of Africa, you can actually see that not only in the Horn of Africa, including the Great Lakes, the resolution of this conflict is being outsourced to external parties. It's being outsourced to external parties. It's clear. Look at, for example, Great Lakes. Qatar is already dealing with it. Washington is on board. Look at, for example, the conflict, the peace process in Sudan. It's clear that Quad is there, marginalizing the region, the continental body, IGAD, and so on and so forth. So the resolution is being outsourced. The parties in the past, the external parties in the past used to provide support for the region in the resolution of their conflict. But now they have decided to not only become part of the problem, and also try to manage the solution. So it's an uncertain world. It's a fading global, order. Uncertainty brings risks. The risk portfolio is increasing, both for the state and for the society. And at the end of the day, all this has a dimension for international peace and security.
As a mediator, if you were to be appointed tomorrow to head the mediation in your own regions, and you would have to ask your boss or your board that appointed you, which instruments would you actually need to deliver? We have mainly talked now about political ingredients, but at technical level, what do you think are ingredients that a mediation needs to have without which it can succeed in these regions? Do you need a big team? Do you need a small team? Do you need flexibility of continuous travels? What are key ingredients that you have seen at technical level that a mediation needs to have? And what are political mediation, as much as leadership you have, if you don't have the instruments, often they can hamper you in the process. What are the lessons learned that you see on this? As Europeans, many of our country, we are investing in mediation support, expertise, mediation facilities. But I want to know from you that you have been exposed on the ground and running mediation, sometimes directly or sometimes as part of a team. What do you think are the conditio sine qua non for a mediator to undertake a mediation from a technical point of view?
Yeah. Yes, we have mapped out the political and diplomatic. Now let's come to the other infrastructure of mediation. The most important one is planning for mediation. Planning for mediation requires pre-mediation planning, during the mediation and post-mediation planning. It is very critical, that one, because certain infrastructure, certain important parameters needs to be put in place for success of the mediation. Once you plan successfully, you are also able to navigate around many issues. The first and the most important one is, first of all, you should have a team that is dedicated to follow the conflict closely on a round-the-clock basis, so that you are able to be kept abreast of the dynamics of the process of the conflict, just like the rest of the constituencies of those parties to the conflict. So that when you engage the parties to the conflict and their leadership, you are engaging them from a position of knowledge. That is the most important thing to do. The second one, of course, is to also have resource persons who also go through history and the current realities of where the parties, the grievances, and you are able to plan ahead on understanding the grievances, so that when you are providing options and solutions as mediators, you are in a position to provide this solution from knowledge. And by the way, when parties see that you are knowledgeable about the situation, they also become, create trust and confidence in the mediation process. So that is a must also. Ability, of course, to have a lean, an efficient, effective team fit for purpose is critical. It's critical. That one is also something you have no option but to put everything in place. Resources are the most important aspect. We have talked about political resources, capital, diplomatic capital, but the other important one is ability to have predictable resources, sustainable resources, and if possible, sufficient resources. Resources are not sufficient, but ambitiously, of course, ability to have that. Then the other one, of course, is also at a technical level, ability to connect between pre-negotiation phase, negotiation phase, and post-negotiation phase. This is important because once you are able to map out this journey, then you are also trying to avoid a crisis which has been very common in the world, and that is mediation becomes successful, agreements are signed, but no one is able to provide an oversight on the implementation of the agreement. So in order to be able to do that, therefore this planning becomes critical, and the technical people, the resource person usually provides you a very integrated approach in this planning process. The other, of course, important one is your ability to provide technical level kind of education or rather awareness raising, sensitization about the issues around the negotiation and so on with the parties. Sometimes we assume that the parties have the ability and capacity to come and negotiate. We make that mistake.
You mean about those technical issues like border dispute, disarmament, and things that often are in negotiations, sectorial issues?
Of course, they are masters of their grievances, but ability to provide solution sometimes become elusive to the parties. Therefore, in the past, sometimes we do an in-house workshop for the parties to build capacities of the parties. Sometimes the government, of course, the government has capacity to be able to engage, they have resources and so on. But the other parties, the opposition, we provided with an in-house capacity to bring them up to a certain level. And in fact, once that is achieved, then we are able to also bring the two parties together for in-house workshop, a very intensive one, on their issues of grievances and providing some kind of possible scenarios, options that are available, something, outside the box that the parties have not even thought about it. So knowledge-driven mediation is critical for the mediators. Knowledge-driven negotiation is also important for the parties to the conflict. Yeah.
Mohamed, Guyo, thank you for being with us today and sharing your views and experience.
Thank you so much.